There we are. Hey, welcome everybody. David Barron here. And once again, we are talking about the question and answers that have to do with hypnosis. As I hope you know, every week, every Saturday, about this time, if not almost every Saturday, I make a serious attempt to go live and, hey Keith Anthony, and answer questions. And it's interesting. It's been rather crazy as far as what my week has been like. So I have not even really had a chance to speculate on the kind of questions. And what happened was that I was looking at a whole bunch of things, and I realized there are quite a few really bizarre and interesting topics that I can cover today. And so I want to do would just address a few of them here. Let's take a look here. Okay, well, the first thing, I am wondering if I can share. It looks like I cannot share. Hey, John Joe Gill, how you doing? It's a pleasure seeing you. By the way, if you are here, if you know someone who is a hypnotist, tag them in this or share it with them. Also, if you can, post it on any of the hypnosis channels that are here. I want to see if there used to be at least an opportunity where I could. I can't share my screen, unfortunately, but I wanted to do that. So I wanted to start off talking about, oh my goodness, here we go. Oh, here we go. And again, I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank Nico for sending me these questions. You're right on it. I really appreciate it. These are good topics. The question is, do you think that the sanctuary process should be used as a springboard to better results when doing hypnosis? And since the person is feeling good, being safe, and most in control, this would seem like makes sense. And the answer is absolutely yes. The sanctuary process is not something I created. In fact, even Jeff Stevens, he, I guess, borrowed it from someone else. But essentially the sanctuary process is, and you can describe it to somebody without an induction. An induction will simply make it much more profound, I would think. So the sanctuary process is basically creating a place in which you feel the very most in control. And it is a place where in your mind, you create this place where you feel the very most in control. And in it, every part of you feels that sense of control. The benefit to this is, first of all, most people go through their life without at least faking a sense of control, if not sincerely feeling it. And in so doing, what they're trying to do is, it's very stressful. Creating this place where they have a feeling of control is a way of simply resetting the mind. The way I describe the sanctuary, in addition to it being the place where they feel the greatest sense of control, I describe it as it is a place where you can go to at any time. And when you go to it, all of the world falls away. It is as if you're taking a long vacation. And it is, you can go there even for a few brief moments and return back always refreshed. And then I also give a couple of suggestions as I describe the sanctuary, which is, this is a perfect place to visit as soon as you turn off your car, as soon as you have parked your car and turned off the engine. It's a perfect place to visit just before you start the car, or if you're in the bathroom alone, or if you're standing in a line. Sanctuary is a perfect place to visit even for a moment. So the whole idea of the sanctuary works perfectly, and I can definitely see that in fact, if you, well, I provide a link there to my website where you can download the sanctuary process, but I'm going to give it to you for free because you can go to newhampshirehypnosis.com, which is my website, and there where it says audios, you can download those things as well, again, for free. So you don't have to buy it. If you buy it, I really appreciate it. That's awesome. You'll have a CD. I'll also give you the downloads, but you don't have to do that. And there's the link in the description of where you can get that. The other question, and this is one of the serendipitous things about what I'm doing here, which is I was in a conversation, I sent out an email that was promoting this book. Self-hypnosis. You can change your life. And I suppose someone had to call me on it. I often say, because my mentor Jeff Stevens also says, there's no such thing as self-hypnosis. And I would like to explain that in a lot more detail. Hypnosis, or at least the state in which you are in the very deepest, what people would call most suggestible, I call it the most instructable state, is a state where there is no you driving the bus. In other psychological terms, it is the ideal agentic state in which someone gives an instruction as to what to see, what to experience, what to imagine, and it just absolutely happens. Let's remember that one of the definitions of hypnosis is where the agentic state is there. Is to bypass the critical factor to put in acceptable suggestions. And the critical factor is that part that evaluates and judges. It is. Now, we know what we can do in hypnosis. We can have someone completely forget their name. That is really challenging to do on your own. I mean, I can't say it. I won't say it can't be done. I've done it. But to tell someone, do whatever you can and just totally forget your name. Know that you can't even find your name even when you think about it. That is really challenging. So hypnosis is the state where you are in the absolute agentic state. There is no you driving the bus, and the hypnotist is in control. That's what I call hypnosis. So by definition, there can't really be what people refer to as self-hypnosis, because you're always there evaluating what your instructions. However, there is what some people call auto-suggestion, auto-hypnosis, imagination processes that they put under the category of self-hypnosis. And essentially, what those are you are talking to yourself, and you are guiding yourself through a hypnosis process. They are beneficial. I'm not going to diminish them at all. You will get some positive results. It may be difficult to get the most dramatic result possible if you're doing self-hypnosis as opposed to doing hypnosis with someone who's actually, steering the bus for you. But it can be done, and I would encourage you, absolutely, learn what people call, I don't call it self-hypnosis, learn self-hypnosis, practice it. It is a way of gaining a sense of control over your mind. And so I hope that answers the question about self-hypnosis. If you have any comments or observations about it, please absolutely post it and let me know. But like I will say often, there really is no such thing as self-hypnosis. There's only hypnosis, and then there's auto-suggestion. And my mentor, Jeff Stevens, he would often say, if you really want to do hypnosis on yourself, create a recording and totally submit your entire will to that recording. That way you don't have to reflect on what you're going to tell yourself. And he did it pretty extensively. He did it quite thoroughly. He managed to hypnotize himself using recordings sufficiently enough so that when he was, well, first of all, he could induce a state where there was just no awareness and no memory, the very deepest state of hypnosis. And he was actually able, using recordings, to, as a test, totally forget who he was, where he was, and have no awareness of what he was doing. And so he created this recording. He went into hypnosis. He listened to it. He woke up, and the test was for 15 minutes not know who he was, where he was at, or what he was doing. And he explained it was really uncomfortable. He was wandering around, very confused, for about 15 minutes, not recognizing anything that was in his house, not knowing what to call himself, not knowing what was happening. And after 15 minutes, the instructions he followed, and he came back and he reflected upon it being not pleasant. It was uncomfortable. Confusion is not a state that you want to be in. So that's how far you can go with that. So that is the whole idea of hypnosis versus self-hypnosis. Miko had additionally asked me about some ideas of learning. Let me see if I can get his. How would you, with specific hypnosis steps, help people to be able to focus really well and ignore all distractions when studying? I use the golden box process and another date, an improvised sanctuary learning place method. Okay. And got seemingly better results with the latter. This is what, okay. Yeah, I would, there are a couple things. And again, I'm going to plug the learning process, or the learning place. It is a hypnotic process that takes 3 freaking days of being hypnotized to create what is essentially an eidetic memory, a memory in which whatever you learn is immediately formatted for learning, for memory, for recall. And he's asking, what can you do short of that? And the several things that come to mind are, first of all, understand learning something and the ability to focus has to do a great deal with interest and motivation. So in hypnosis, you can begin to create and instruct an intense feeling of fascination, curiosity, and focus on a particular subject. And then start linking everything that you learned within that subject to something that is pleasurable. And we have tended in our lives, if you reflect back, have studied things in which, as we're learning it, we're having these succession of aha moments in which, we're learning this and we see how we can apply it. We're learning this and we're learning this. And because each one of those new pieces of information is fascinating, is compelling, we start to make it fit. We start to learn it. We start to get very eager about applying it. So the first thing I would do is I would increase interest, fascination, and excitement and joy in learning, and then specific to the topic. So not just learning in general, yes, learning in general, but especially the one particular topic. Now, Miko said he improvised a learning place process that got some better results. I would love to understand the process that you described there, Miko. So if you get a chance to post a detailed post to the Advanced Skills Facebook group, please do. What I would recommend, and well, one of the things that comes to mind is that understand first and foremost, learning is state-based. When we learn something in one environment, it is much easier to recall what we learned in that very same environment. So the whole purpose of the learning place is to make the environment entirely internal. When you're in a state of learning, you want to be able to also be in the same state when you recall the information. The example that is used by Jeff Stevens and myself is, I think when you're going to college and you are, it is 9 or 10 o'clock at night and you are huddled over your desk with a soft drink, music's playing, there's a lamp overhead, and you're trying to study something, and you have to recall it in an entirely different environment. You have to recall it in a giant lecture hall with bright lights in the middle of the day, other people around. And so you have to mentally sort of go back to where you learned it and then recall it. So it's called cross-referencing from one state to another. With the learning place, all you have to do is have the state of learning and then you recall it. And again, it's entirely internal. So I did a little test/experiment in which, and again, I have not gone through the learning place, so understand this, in which I wanted to learn something. And so as I was studying it, I was also wondering what would be the state, if I just have to think of something, a state, an emotional state, maybe an object, that I could recall everything that I am learning. So I was reading a book, getting some details about something, and I thought, okay, let's make it so that if I just think of this topic, I have a feeling that's associated with everything that I learned. And so I went through it and I studied and learned and learned and learned. And then when I closed the book, all I had to do is recall the feeling of what I was learning, and then all the information would come back. And it continued. It was persistent. So the learning place is a way to do that in a much broader general terms and actually get it to happen at the subconscious level. So there's no conscious effort involved, that it just happens automatically. All right, let's see, where else are we going here? Let's see. Oh, hey, great, thank you guys. I wanted to see if I could share a screen. I don't think that I can. So I'm just going to share a link to you, and you can look at it, and it's very weird. It's called Deprogram. Let me make sure I got this right. I'll just copy and paste it. Here we go. Okay, Deprogram Wiki. Oh, man. And I have written on mind control and things like this. And one of the reasons I wrote on mind control is because of all of the extensive, crazy, paranoid stuff that is out there. Deprogram Wiki is, well, what is it? What's the best way of describing it? Deprogram Wiki is probably your best way of scaring the crap out of yourself. It really makes the assumption, it doesn't even make the assumption, it just states it as fact, that there is a vast, huge network of conspirators who are there brainwashing people, taking their minds and splitting their personalities into fragments and having them become robotic slaves to the so-called Illuminati. We're talking Illuminati Mind Control. First of all, you're going to ask me, do I think it's real? Well, there are plenty of effed up people out there who will mess with someone's mind. I've met the victims of these people. But a whole conspiracy of people who can keep a secret that, no, I don't believe there is that out there. There are probably factions of people out there who form small groups and work to torturously brainwash people and fracture their minds and see if you can turn them into robots. These are not good people. But and again, I've only worked with a couple of people like that who have suffered from that type of abuse. The question comes up: is it real? Is that possible? Well, if you go to programwiki.com, it goes into a vast amount of detail. The majority of the information on that wiki are from other sites and other books that assume this type of programming is real and works, and it goes into a great deal of detail. I will give a warning to anyone who reads this, which is the first warning you're going to get on that page is that it could trigger you to have seizures or have alternate personalities come alive or things like that. Maybe that's true, maybe not. My warning is it can be very scary reading it, and I need you to be aware of something. And that is, if you read this enough, it'll start to make you frightened and paranoid. Be aware that anytime you are under fear, under any circumstance that you are under fear, several things are happening. You are narrowing your ability to think long term. In fact, it stops. So if you read something like this and you start to get paranoid, you have essentially limited your thinking ability. You have shut off a huge number of cognitive factors that allow you to reason. And you basically limited yourself. And creating that type of fear is what people do when they want to control people. So read it for the information. Please do not accept it as true or real, and be aware of what that information is doing to you. If you start to feel as though this is threatening stuff, stop and reevaluate it, for God's sake, because you are cutting off a lot of your mental faculties when you are afraid. In fact, anytime you're under threat, just be aware of it. Anytime you're under threat, the only thing you can think about is what's happening this moment. You can't think long term. You can't think of your plans. There is a really devious strategy that bail bondsmen use to find people who skip bail. And it uses this very quickly. What they'll do is they'll have a woman call up, say a guy skips bail, put down $10,000 on a $100,000 bail, and he leaves town, so you have to go out and find him. So what they'll do is they will have a woman call this man's girlfriend and basically say, I'm looking for so-and-so because he's my boyfriend and he got me pregnant. Of course, the girlfriend responds by saying, he ain't your girlfriend. He ain't your boyfriend. He's my boyfriend. He says, well, I don't know. And he gets this girlfriend in such a tither and frenzy that she cannot think straight, and then hangs up. Then about an hour passes and the bail bondsman calls and asks if they found out where this guy who skipped town is, and the angry girlfriend immediately gives him up. Okay, keep in mind what has happened. They managed to get her in such a frenzy, her long-term thinking stopped and didn't even consider the possibility that this was a ruse. So just be aware of any time you are frightened. Okay, now that put aside, we can go back to Mind Control Wiki, or not Mind Control Wiki, but Deprogram Wiki. If you look at it and you begin to think of it in terms of, there's some really interesting things in there that at least allow you to think creatively about how to hypnotize and train and program people. It talks extensively about the power of being able to dissociate, and dissociation is in fact the essential and the main tool to help to make changes in somebody using hypnosis. In fact, I will say that at some level, anytime someone makes a positive and dramatic change, they have to dissociate from where they are at, reevaluate new information, and bring it in, and then reassociate. So yes, dissociation is a very powerful tool. And if you read through the information, what you're going to see on this Deprogram Wiki is vast. It's more information than it's huge. It's just huge. What I would have you do is go ahead and just read that and see what kind of information it brings up. What kind of questions it brings up. I will answer any questions regarding things that you might read on deprogramwiki.com. And I'll give you certainly my opinions. I am not a mind control deprogrammer. I am a hypnotist. I have done some research. I have done some practical application that could be applied to the term mind control. But I will give you certainly my very best opinion and recommendations and answers to questions that you have when you read that website, Mind Control Wiki. All right. Let's see. Any other questions here? Hi, Kaylee. Thanks for joining us. Other questions? Well, there was something that I had mentioned, which is I was going to talk about some of my rather weird things that happened in hypnosis or in my hypnotic journey. Some of them, I'm trying to remember a couple of them that I haven't talked a lot about already. I have found, let's see, I did have a couple, I talk about those people who've been severely abused. I have known a few people who have alternate personalities in them. They are completely aware of these alternate personalities, and being able to integrate and control them is really strange. I mean, one person I know was just deviously abused in all the ways you hate to imagine by her father when she was very young. And yeah, just totally it's cracked up her personality, created a part that would abuse her. It was a very robotic part. It would just come out and say, whip yourself, and she would totally abuse herself. It also created a childlike part. I hate to describe some of the stuff that happened here because it's so devious. There's a thing that is referred to as trauma bonding, and it is. I will describe it because it's worth being aware of what people are capable of doing. It does happen. It happens. In this case, the father locked this child in a closet for who knows how long, until she thought she was going to die, and then came in and rescued her. And of course, she was grateful and loving toward this man who rescued her, who also put her in this closet. And the response is called trauma bonding, and it makes the person incredibly dependent upon the person who abuses them. So that's devious stuff. And of course, this is something someone did to a young child, so there's no excuse for that. The result of all of this was an adult who was highly functional, who had a family, who at one point had a break. I think she heard fireworks and immediately went back into a childlike mode, and all the old triggers just came back around. She would alternate between different personalities that were very childlike. One was sort of mom-like. She was, as far as I can tell, a very loving and supportive mom. And that was, God bless, that was not a thing that was passed on to her children. So, but if you ever deal with somebody like that, I would just recommend you don't. It's more than likely out of your control. You're looking at long-term therapy. You can certainly be their friend. You may find working with them incredibly frustrating, though, because they do things that you just can't understand or justify. Switching from one voice to another, acting like a child and adult, and sometimes it does cause some alarm if you work with someone like that. So I mean, that's one of the weird things that I've come across. Other weird things, I have worked with a couple of people who have been, they were incredibly good somnambulists, could do things without any recall of them happening, and they were abused. One person that I know was basically sort of the puppet of this one cult, and she would have vague memories of things happening or awarenesses of things that she would do without knowing why, and then the next day she'd have empty moments of time. And in those cases, most of that was integrated as far as it was brought back. I worked with her to just remove some of the memory blocks, and that was pretty straightforward. As far as some of the funnier, weird things on my hypnosis journey, I guess if you're going to do hypnosis professionally, you're going to run into people who do all the fetish stuff. And not my interest really, but maybe I was interested in it for about 15 minutes of my life. It's just once you get involved in it, you either find like you have a taste for it or you don't. There are some really good people out there, and there are some who are on this group who are very good and very skilled at doing the fetish stuff. So this is the stuff where people like to be submissive and hypnotized and things like that. Like I say, not my stuff, not my style. I did work with some people who, a pair, a man and a woman, who he wanted to be the submissive and be hypnotized. And it was pretty straightforward, worked out really well. I just hypnotized him and transferred all control over to her and left, and they were absolutely happy. So those things sort of happen. Let's see if there are I wonder if there's any other comments here. What I would really like is, if you could, take a look at Deprogram Wiki. Give me your thoughts on it. If you have any questions, I will give you my best. Post it in the Advanced Hypnosis Skills group here. And let's see what kind of information can come about. And I want to warn you, if this gets too uncomfortable going through that, or it gets you too frightened, just step away, please step away. It's not a pleasant experience to be in. And well, like I say, I can't really think of anything more. No further long questions here. I just want to let you know that I try and do this every week. If I can do it next week, I will be here again the very same time. I will last up to an hour of doing this. So if you have any questions, I will take it from the group or from the comments in this video, and I'll be happy to address them to the best of my skill and ability. Guys, please, if you are here, it's because you're not somewhere else. And so you actually decided to be here and make a sacrifice. I really appreciate it. Want to encourage you, go through the Mind Control Publishing website. There are some free downloads there. I'm trying to put some free downloads there. if you'll find some there already. If there's anything, any comments or changes that you have on the products, let me know. Send me an email. And more than anything, just thank you for taking part in this. If there is anything I can do, please contact me. Likewise, if there's someone you need who needs my help, I am more than happy to help out. I do a lot of work through Skype with a majority of my clients, and it works incredibly well. Guys, again, thank you for taking the sacrifice to be here. You guys have my thumbs up, and if you have any questions, let me know. We'll talk next week. Please take care. Bye.